I'm a senior solution consultant with Teracore and your host for today. I'm joined by Michael Calkins and Joe Longo. Let me quickly give you just a quick bio in terms of who these gentlemen are that are joining us today. Mike has over 28 years of experience in large, small, and startup organizations. He has extensive and broad-based experiences and achievements in IT and consulting, and is recognized for building and leading teams and organizations in both service-focused and product-focused companies. And we're also joined today by Joe Longo. He's the Vice President at PSVillage. He's responsible for delivering high-end services to PSVillage members, including strategic direction, training, and mentoring programs, while working closely with PSVillage sponsors. Joe's an accomplished public speaker and author with numerous speaking engagements and publications to his name. So with that in mind, Michael, please take it away.
Hey, thanks, Marlon. Thanks for the introduction. Let me just get started here, Marlon, before we hand over to Mike. And good morning, everybody. We do have a very large audience. I'm a little bit worried. We've got so many people registered, concerned that we may actually wear out, go to webinar and go to meeting today. Anyway, it looks like it may be holding up. Before we get started, I just want to create some context around this webinar. You know, it's not often that you hear people talk about leadership skills and project management in the same sentence. Often we hear people talk about project management in very discrete, very black and white terms regarding schedules and deadlines and so forth. And then when you talk about leadership skills, you really hear people talk about that in very gray terms. It's usually a HR topic. It may be to do with your career path and so forth. Well, some time ago, Mike and I were comparing notes on this very topic, and we found that we shared a stream of consciousness on the insight and the fact that leadership skills actually have as much to do with the success of a project as do a lot of the other aspects that we typically assign to project management. So leadership and corporate culture and just treating people as assets has as much to do with the project management capability. So based on our views on this, based on Mike's experience with over his years of managing projects, and plus the fact that I was very fortunate early in my career to get a lot of training in leadership skills, because it just happened that the company I worked for felt it was important back then. We felt that we wanted to put this webinar on and really share these lessons learned with you, the audience. So this is the first of a series of webinars we would like to roll out. We're going to have a couple of others coming up on risk management for project portfolios, on organizational excellence and so forth. So I wanted to give you that context, and with that, I'd like to hand over to Mike, who will get started with the formal part of the presentation. Over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. So in this webinar, we're going to start by taking a quick review as to why being a good manager is so important for your business. Then we're going to take a look at the importance of empowering those in your team, how this is accomplished in your traditional team setting, and how to bring about the change to doing so. Finally, we're going to review insights on empowering leadership by thinking back to our driver's ed experience and review where we might find opportunities for empowerment. First, however, I think we have a quick poll. Marlon?
All right. So the audience should be seeing a poll at this point. Let me read it through. So what's the primary reason for resources leaving the organization? So please select one. Let me read through some of the choices that you have. So do you think people have left the organization due to compensation issues? Do they dislike the work tasks that they've been assigned to? Was it the relationship that they had with their manager? Or was there a lack of career growth opportunities, or plainly other? And maybe I'll turn it over to you guys. What, in your opinion, would, or what, from your experiences, has been the reason for attrition from an organizational perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Marlon. And the reason we're throwing this up for the audience is because the next series of slides actually talks to how leadership skills can lower attrition. But so, Mike, while people filling this out, what have you seen either in your personal career or for people leaving your organization?
Well, the last time I left was because of a lack of funds, but typically, I think it's been because I've been looking for opportunities that aren't existing in my current position. I wanted that next step, that next leadership opportunity. I wanted to grow. And often I didn't want to leave, but career-wise, I wanted to make that next step and to do that. So that's why I left. How about yourself?
For me, it was definitely lack of career growth. Not feeling I didn't have a seat at the table, that wasn't recognized, or maybe didn't have a voice. All those things that you could put into that same bucket. That are you important in the company? Are you recognized? Anyhow, we've got some great responses going, so I think we can close the poll now. There we go.
All right, and let's just see how our audience voted. So 47% said it was based on a lack of growth opportunities, followed by a relationship with manager at 31%.
That's amazing. And we did not doctor these results. So Mike, carry on.
Well, that ties in very nicely because, and two of those, the relationship with manager and lack of career, can kind of go both ways. Depends on the relationship you had and whether you consider that your lack of career. But obviously, almost half of the people leave because of their lack of career, and this is exactly what we're trying to give ideas to how to prevent in your place that you work now. So what we want to start off with is an individual's manager is the primary reason for attrition. Basically, there's some studies out there been very interesting. Salary.com says that employees stay for managers first and coworkers second. A Connect study says that satisfaction with pay, benefits, learning, development, advancement is mediated by the relationship with the supervisor. And Teracore Institute says poor leadership is the reason why over 60% of employees will leave their job. Now, I find that interesting in talking to an HR specialist last week, and he thought that number was way too low. He thought it was closer to 80. So I think that, the poor leadership, it's not, and we'll hit upon this later, but it's not so much the management, it's the leadership. So, and we're going to specify really what the differences of those are here going in a few minutes. So, in summary, it's important that you understand that your role as a manager has a direct impact on people staying in the organization. That a manager's actions and leadership skills are directly related to your organization's success as well as reducing employee turnover.
Yeah, I want to jump in here with a quick word. I was at a company that was growing exceedingly fast. We were hiring probably faster than we could possibly absorb the people. And at one point, HR got in and found that we were actually losing people almost as fast as we were hiring them. And they started conducting exit interviews, and they found that there were some employees that were leaving the company after 3 months, because in that 3 months they had never met their manager. Now, that sounds almost implausible, but if you know the situation that we were in and so forth, you could probably understand it. So I think there's obviously there's no malicious intent on the part of the manager, but because they think that their priorities are in different places, like project management and so forth, they may overlook some of these important aspects. In my case, I learned years ago that no matter how busy I was, when a new employee came in my organization, on day one, I would set aside 2 hours in a boardroom with a whiteboard and just go Q&A over the in the organization. Those 2 hours were money in the bank. No matter how busy I was over the next 3 or 4 weeks, whether that employee saw me or not, they really felt that there was a bond, and they felt that they were an important person. So that's a tip for folks not to make the same mistake as my prior company.
Yeah, and it's more than the story that people have never met their manager. I'm going to say it's more than just meeting it as well. You got to have those conversations back and forth to understand what people really want and need. So let's first get into the traditional teamwork and what that is. Traditionally, you have a manager, and the manager is responsible and has authority over all the decisions and the plans. And if you can only trust one person with the power on this team, then of course that makes sense to do. But if you have a team of good people, this becomes very ineffective and inhibits the working of the group to its full potential. And I think you can understand that if you have a single authority, there's a possibility where you bottleneck and slow down your team, and change it from a one person controlling everything to empowering the whole team, and it helps everyone into the team and be more successful as well as the team being more successful. So in thinking about the issues that are apparent in the team environment, I think we can begin to see why we want to start aligning ourselves to an empowerment approach. We work in a people business where our companies are going to be as successful as those in the company can take it. And there's no substitute of a workforce that is knowledgeable in the areas that they work. And to remain competitive, organizations today are very lean. And to remain competitive, you got to leverage all the employee capabilities that you have that are at your disposal. So the solution is we got to start creating empowered teams.
Yeah, and again, a comment from me here is that this message isn't just to the project managers. It really is to the leadership at the top. It's setting the culture. Another good case study I've got is at a company, at yet another company that I was at in my career. Again, we were growing very rapidly. We brought in a CFO to take us public, basically to get the finances pretty much straightened out so that we could have a successful IPO, and we did. Anyhow, in one of his first meetings in the leadership roundtable, we were expecting him to talk about cutting costs, tightening spending, profitability, and so forth. Instead, what he led with was this. He said, hey, you know what? In a software company, you don't really have assets as a traditional bricks and mortar. In a software company, your assets are your people. And then he went on to explain what he wanted to do with the people, which was basically not to provide them with free cooked meals a day and all those sorts of things, but really to invest in them and their capabilities so that they could be satisfied and they could deliver. So it was pretty amazing to us that he made that statement as his opening comment. That set the culture throughout the company. And as I said, we had a very successful IPO, and it was probably one of the best highlights of my career there. So these leadership messages today are not just for the managers. We really have to manage upwards with this as well.
Yeah, and your point about it was being in a software company, I think that as companies become very lean and the organizations have to rely on the individuals they have, and there's much more emphasis on hiring the right people, you want to keep those right people there. And you got to start figuring out how to make sure that they are the true assets that you believe in your company. So I think there's a couple of important things that happen on teams where individuals begin to feel empowered. First, team members become vested in team's activity. On a human or personal level, empowering relates to the top two tiers of Maslow's hierarchy, the esteem or feeling respected, and self-actualization or the realization of one's full potential. When you fulfill these needs from your employees, your team members will naturally want to guarantee and ensure a project success. When it comes to quality, you are far more ahead in being proactive instead of reactive. Empowered members give this to you as they are far more likely to speak up, present issues where you can be proactive, and offer suggestions.
So Mike, let me ask you a quick question on that last slide. Why is the outcome of a project so dependent on the feeling of the team member that they are empowered? What really is going on there? Because it's not intuitively obvious that you empower a person, now they work differently.
Yes. Basically what happens is the outcome is depending on their involvement because they feel more engaged. You know, that when you actually feel that build that view that people are empowered in an organization, they have a say in an organization or a team, that gives them the capabilities to be able to speak out more freely because they're now tied into it. They have some skin in the game. They are equally empowered for the success as well as anyone else is. So when you get to that point that they feel that way, then they're more likely to speak up. If they're more likely to speak up, you're more likely to find issues before they become a risk that you have to deal with. So that's the key to empowerment.
So is it also saying that if the project doesn't go well, that individual cannot point a finger because it was just as much on them as it was on anyone else? Is that another way of looking at it?
No, definitely not, because this is where you get into the difference between the characteristics of a leadership and a manager. Managing is different than leadership, and it's not so much that the manager is held responsible. There's all kinds of issues, of course, that come up in a course of a project that has, concerns or involvements that promote risk. But no, it's not that it's not a a company where your hands in the cookie jar in your claw if you're reaching in there. Empowering is a positive thing, certainly not a negative thing. It has no negative consequences.
Got it.
So there's a couple things to become aware of as you begin empowering your team. The first thing you have to understand is you are relinquishing control. You're providing others with a voice. Within that voice, you need to allow them to have some creativity within the scope of what you've given them to be able to have a voice against. And then you also are giving them the opportunity to question the status quo. And that becomes a point to where you become transparent. This includes them questioning you, the manager, about the whole project management process, and you, the manager, giving to the team members a reasonable and logical explanation about the what's, whys, whens, and hows of project status that you're currently in.
Yeah, and this is a really good point. That last point there, Mike, about being transparent, I found in my experience that certain managers can see that almost as, well, they're very uncomfortable about it. They're somewhat threatened either by the fact that by being transparent, by showing people your decision making, you're either showing, exposing some ignorance on a specific topic, or you're leaving yourselves open to criticism. Now, you may recall back a few years ago, there were phrases like self-empowered teams and continuous improvement were very much a flavor of the month. They came out of work by this great guy called Deming and this whole capability around Kaizen. Well, in self-empowered teams, people had to be transparent. And I learned years ago with my project teams that if I opened up early on that, hey, I figure you guys are smarter than me, and often they were, know more than me, and often they did, then it wasn't threatening. And in fact, my team members would relish the ability for the student to become the teacher, for them to teach me and perhaps help me with my decision making. And guess what? It made me look better with my peers and my superiors. So transparency shouldn't be a threat.
Yeah, and this leads us right next to the next slide here. I think this is the best little verb on leadership here. And that's the best executive is the one who has sense enough to pick good men to do what he wants and self-restrained enough to keep from meddling them while they do it. And I think if you have that perspective, if you think of yourself as you want to always hire better people than you are around you, and you're always surrounding yourself with good people, they're going to make you better, and you're going to take them places that they wouldn't go without that. So there's that success that builds upon each other. And I think that this is one of the things that, you know, when you get transparent, you've got to understand that you are opening yourself up. But if you got the right people in there, then it's just going to make everyone better. And you're going to keep your people longer, too. What we have to recognize, though, is that leadership and management are different. And I mentioned this earlier. You know, they're often opposing traits. A manager manages things, and a leader leads people. And you can understand that there's some fundamental traits there that are different. But what's important to understand is good leadership is more important than who leads. The other thing about the leadership is leadership's such a culture. And you got to think, what kind of culture do you want in your environment? What kind of culture do you want existing on your team? Do you want one where people can communicate to each other, where there is that transparency, where people do feel that they want them, each other to speak up and address concerns or bring forth suggestions? You know, you got to think that this is the same thing that sets your culture. So if there's one thing that you take away from today's session, there are 3 strategies to adopt immediately into how to empower individuals in your group. What you do now, take a look at the analyze, is what you do now that you can hand off to somebody else. Are there things out there that you can empower other people with to perform some of those activities? Like most of us in this webinar, there are activities we haven't initiated for some reason. See if we can delegate some of these. And plan ahead. Now, this isn't just in terms of planning ahead from a project point of view as the requirements in your activities, but to plan ahead in the empowerment task and the activities. Find opportunities for them down the road in your planning to be able to have empowerment opportunities.
Mike, these are three great takeaways for people listening here. And if there's anything else that, there's nothing else that they take away from this session, these are three things they can do right away. But I know what people are thinking regarding the third one, I'm planning. Most project managers are thinking, I'm already planning ahead. So what more they should be doing, or what are they not doing in your mind?
Well, it goes back to that point of good managers are always planning, and they're always looking ahead at what activities are there and what needs to be done in the sequence of the events. But they're not often looking at who can I have this, who can I put this to, who can have this opportunity to lead this, who can I empower. So it's that mixing of the planning that a project manager does and that planning of looking for those opportunities where you find somebody on your team to do empowerment activities.
And regarding the issue of delegation, a lot of project managers will tell you, hey, my team is overworked, understaffed. If I try and delegate one more thing, I'll have a pile of screw in my hands. So what advice do we give them there?
Well, the last thing you want to do is become one of those managers where people run and hide every time you turn the corner because they're afraid of getting another task thrown on them. And yes, there are. We talked about people being lean. But you've got to look, in an organization or a team, you've got to start looking at the big picture. And that's from the organization point of view. And the last thing you want is the good people on your team, those that want to take leadership opportunities, to never be presented one of those opportunities. So the suggestion would be to do what you can to manage up. Talk to your managers about how to break someone free or to put another person on the team or to shift things around until you give people on your team some opportunity for empowerment. And like I said, that kind of goes in the wind of, everyone's got to be fully burdened and going on. But if you look at the cost of bringing the right people on and the fact that you don't want people to lose, you got to balance that cost out a little bit. You got to find ways that you can get the people who want to have those empowerment exercises, those capabilities of doing so. So throughout my career, managers have used the word drive, taking the keys, yet the actions that they do are nothing like those that I learned while I was trying to drive a vehicle. In truth, I don't think they're very effective in empowering anyone. One of the things people understand, it's not access to the keys that count. So in this session, we're going to give a few tips or insights in helping empower leadership within your team, hopefully in a way you can relate to from your driver's ed experience as well as your own personal experiences in the job. So insight number one, you can't drive from the back seat. Oftentimes a manager assigns authority to a team member, yet no one else on the team has any idea that this person is put in charge and is in the driver's seat. When I was in the back seat with the others in driver's ed class, we never had to guess who the next person in the driving was going to be. The instructor would pull over, said, Mike, switch to so-and-so. He authorized. He's telling the people in the car who was going to take the lead. And this is important because we weren't in the back seat trying to figure out, okay, whose turn it was, who had the right to drive next, who wanted to drive next. It wasn't our decision. The leader of the car gave that information and authorized the individual. So people are going to be ineffective in driving your initiative unless you tell everyone involved that this person is taking the lead. You've got to get the driver out of the back seat and behind the steering wheel. Insight number two, not everyone is excited about driving. There is no better way to kill thought within a group or an organization by having a manager say, hey, you brought up the idea, you get to own it. Or, hey, if you bring up an idea, it's all yours. While everyone wants to be part of a journey, not everyone wants to take the lead. And you might have to find someone else that would like to drive or find out whether they're not interested. And there's a great story in driver's ed where our instructor, there was a person who had never been behind the wheel before. And before getting the kid in the car, he put his hand on his shoulder. I said, hey, don't worry. I'm not going to let any harm come your way. He assured him that when they got in the car and got going, he promised not to jump out of the car while it got going. And once he got in the car, he showed them there was 2 sets of pedals and he could help brake if necessary. And I think that mentality is such a great way to ensure that everyone's going to be okay when they're empowering and empowering a new and hesitant driver. So whenever you assign a new task to someone, explain why you think they can handle the situation. Let them know how it's going to benefit them, and reassure them that you're there along the way and you're not going to jump out when it gets going.
Hey, Mike, I've got a war story here. I never actually went to driver's ed. You know, I'm from Australia. There you learn how to drive a car by stealing it when you're 17. But anyway, what I really wanted to share with you was some people don't want to lead and may never want to lead, right? I actually had an employee who was a leader of one of my development teams, and he was, honestly, it just wasn't working out as a project manager, as a leader. There were people talking about what we should do with this guy and so forth. Well, I came up with a creative idea to put him into a single contributor role where it was very, very, had a high profile. And guess what? We did that, and his career absolutely flourished. So what it was, and the lesson here for the managers is some people may not want to lead, and even when you nurture them, they still don't want to lead. They've got other things going on in their lives and in their head. That doesn't mean that that's a bad employee. And I really do believe it's our responsibility as leaders to find where they do fit, because people work for you because they want to work for you. If they're messing up somehow because they're not driving and stealing cars and doing things like that, it's probably because we put them in that situation.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that each person on a team comes to you with individual strengths and weaknesses. And you know you've got to sit down and talk to them to figure out where is it they want to go, and if they have the capability of doing it. Well, we had a person that really wanted to lead, but they just had a new baby, and and he felt terrible that he couldn't take the opportunity that was presented to him to take it and lead an effort. And I understood exactly, and I think that when you do that and you don't put that pressure on, the next time when they come to bat, you're really going to get something.
Hey, Mike. I was kidding. I never really did steal cars.
All right, so insight number 3, learning to drive is not a natural activity. Let's face it, some people have the skills to be a race car driver, while others are the drivers you complain about on your way to the grocery store. And just as learning is far more important than getting the car up and running and in gear, empowering your people doesn't stop after the initiative's kickoff. You always have to be looking for an opportunity to mentor your new leaders.
So it really begs a question here, which is how do you recognize someone who's got potential for leadership? Not everybody on this call is a project manager. We have quite a few VPs and directors here as well. So,
well, yeah, that's a good question, and I think it comes down to there are people, like you said, that have never talked to their manager, and that's just a shame. I think as a manager, you owe the people that work for you an opportunity to express what is it they want to get in the time of working with you. And whatever that is and whatever issues they have or concerns that they have, those are one-on-one discussions. So there might be people that of course they're the kids that come to you with the hands up and say, oh, let me run, or they want to do it all. And then you have someone who wants to, but just isn't the person to put their hand up in the air to do so. And you got to get those opportunities to recognize who your leaders are and what is it they want to do in those individual conversations. Insight number 4, let the driver drive. You have to be mindful of deauthorizing a leader. You delegate the authority, and of course you have the right to change it. But I think in order to earn trust in your organization or your team, you've got to let the driver drive. I mean, can you imagine a driver ed instructor with a car full of students reaching over and grabbing the steering wheel and saying, no, 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 not that way. And I don't think we should expect anything less from our managers than what we get from our driver's ed class. You don't want to make sure that you don't deauthorize a leader, especially in front of everyone else. Your job is to give up the wheel and to teach others to become good drivers.
And there is a corollary to that as well. This is probably the typical rookie mistake for a manager or project manager who wants to be a leader. they delegate, and then they inadvertently undermine because they try, they fret and worry so much about the particular task, they try and grab the wheel back. So that's a rookie mistake, and getting comfortable with that really just takes a lot of patience and a lot of learning. But be mindful of it.
Yep, good points. So insight number 5, people learning to drive need to understand their limits. Okay, you remember the kid, the one who grew up driving everything that had wheels out on his family's land. They're typically the ones who, when it was their turn to get behind the wheel, you wanted to make sure you had your seatbelt on tight. And the first thing they had to understand was that there were limits to driving on the road with others. So we need to set expectations for the trip by developing individual requirements. And you need to make sure you do this before starting out. You need to make sure that, and we talked about this, each driver has their unique driving style and history. And when it comes to setting expectations and the requirements, for one person who might have more experience or you're more comfortable with, the expectation might be, give me your status report at the end of the week. But with someone new, you might want to do a daily check-in. You might want to be in part of their conversations and meetings with others. So develop individualized requirements for each individual, and it's important to make sure that they know this before they start out. Insight number 6, you can learn just by being in the car. You need to look for opportunities to mentor your newer leaders and understand that there's a reason why there's others in the car when you're doing driver's ed. There's constant learning going on. You don't have to be the one solely behind the wheel to pick up those instructions. So when you are working with your team, make sure you're not solely focused on the driver. Find opportunities where you can educate, train, mentor the driver, but also do that at every opportunity you can that you encompass your team in doing so.
So Mike, is that your family car there? That's your family photo?
No, but that is one car full of people. As a side note, I don't think my driver's ed experience or teacher would have been very happy to know that I could get 17 people in a station wagon. So as practitioners, these are what we see as important lessons that have been learned. Okay? When you set out and you empower someone, they're typically very excited about that. And you have to make sure that when you do that, you prioritize those empowerment tasks with other tasks that they have. A lesson learned was, man, everyone would do those and they forget about the day-to-day things that needed to be done that was in their scope. So you got to make sure that you communicate and prioritize those empowerment activities with the other activities that they have. The other thing is you have to be flexible in allowing people to do things their own way. Unless there's something in a specific reason why doing a task in a certain way is needed, then encourage them to be creative in their style. And the third one is enable, start now, enable empowerment. And the hardest task of that, especially for new managers, is that stepping aside, right? I mean, typically new managers are there because they've been very successful. And why were they successful? Because whatever got thrown to them, they could do. Now when they're in a leadership and a managership role, it's very hard for them to delegate. It's very hard for them to empower others. But it works for everyone. That's one of the things that you need to start doing is empowering your leadership. So let me talk real quick on recapping some of the strategies we talked about. Number one, make sure you authorize your leadership. Make sure people know that you've done this, that the leader that you've empowered is in control, and be mindful of how you deauthorize. Reassure the driver. Let them know that they're not in it alone. Always be mentoring, whether it's directly to the person that's leading a task or leading an opportunity. Mentor them, mentor the people on your team. Make sure it's individualized. Each person comes to you with backgrounds, and you got to develop individual requirements. And then make sure that when you sit down and you have the conversation and you empower someone, make sure how those tasks relate to the activities that they're doing in other places. So your goal, be the leader that your management team wants because you're successful and driven teams, and your team wants to be part of because they feel empowered, they're growing, they're learning.
Mike?
So, yes.
Mike, yeah, before we go on, as you were talking, we did get a question from the audience, and I want to spend the time here to explain it. The question was, we've been throwing around the terms manager and project manager quite loosely. We've been interchanging them. And I do want to explain, from our perspective, that the roles that we're talking about today apply to both a functional manager, that is someone who's managing team people, or a project manager, someone who's managing tasks and trying to facilitate people. We weren't talking today, and I think you would agree, Mike, about career growth. The idea is either of those two people, a manager or project manager, is empowered, is working over a group of people that either directly reporting to them or not. And these lessons, would you agree, Mike, apply to either in the same way?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to hear that that was a question, because when we put this together, it's really, people from various different levels have that capability of empowering others, whether it's in a team or within an organization. So it was built that way that it was handling both situations.
Good, thanks.
So, before we get into questions, I want to thank you for attending the session. It was great to have you here. And before handing things back over to Joe, let me give a shout out to Teracore. Teracore is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business headquartered in Atlanta with offices around Washington, D.C. metro area. And for over 10 years now, we've provided enterprise IT and management consulting services to the federal government. So, Joe?
Thanks, Mike. And yeah, we're about to get into questions, but a little bit of background on PSVillage. It's the largest professional network of services executives. You can join PSVillage for free as a guest member. You'll find in there a host of resources, including a library, pulse articles. There's even a job board that we promote. It's quite successful, and a host of other things that I won't get into now. But please do visit us on PSVillage, register, and keep yourself updated. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Marlon. And Marlon, we may take a question or two and go into your session.
Yeah, that sounds good. Absolutely. If you guys would be so kind to hang out with us for another 15 or 20 minutes, maybe I can rattle off a couple of questions to the two of you, if you'd be so kind to oblige.
Sure.
All right. So here's a question that came in. This all sounds great, but in reality, what problems can we anticipate when we try to mix leadership and deadlines?
That's a good one for you, Mike.
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back to what we talked before. I mean, deadlines are deadlines. You have a business to run. You have to do those, and that takes precedence over finding leadership or mentorship opportunities for leadership. So, of course, business is business, and you have to run it. But, I go back to try to make sure that looking forward, do that third thing, plan ahead. Try to find out opportunities in the future where you can do empowerment exercises and empowerment opportunities.
Yeah, there was also a comment in the questions about risk management, maybe having to spend money to get there. And thanks to the person that posted that. With respect to this question, I do believe it's absolutely about risk management. Managing your deadlines is managing your risk around the project. We all talk about risk management for a project, typically technical risks. Often we don't really look at the people risks with respect to what's going on in their lives. And a lot of things we'll talk about today would actually help you with that. But with respect to having to spend money, I don't necessarily agree. Even the first-time person getting out there, trying to manage your risks, I don't think you have to put all on black and then find, well, I spent too much time on leadership and projects failed. I don't think it's necessarily true. This is something, it is an issue of continuous improvement. It's an issue of, in your project, you are always doing a sanity check, whether it's every week or every day if it's critical. I've been on projects where we were doing 2 checks a day because it was that critical. And that's how you manage it, and I do really believe you don't have to lose money or necessarily risk losing money to try and build up leadership.
All right. Let me ask one additional question before maybe I steal the show and show the Teracore part of things. But and this sounds like a question that I would have asked. So it reads, you don't say much about fun and enjoyment on the job. our company finds that keeping people engaged in fun activities adds to their job. So, for example, Fridays are water gun days. I'd like to work there. So Fridays are water gun days. Do your leaders still do those things?
Mike, why don't you go first?
The answer is yes. You know, as a leader, you've got to make, and I'll take it back to the driver's ed experience. Why is it this many years later I remember so much about driver's ed? Because he made it fun. And it's those same principles that you know, I try to encourage today. That, you know, people have fun, first of all, when they feel that there's value. When they're valued, when we hit those top two ends of the needs of the Maslow hierarchy, right? So when you're empowering people, you're giving them more of an opportunity to have fun. And you're encouraging them, and they're learning. And that's what I think most people consider a fun part of the job. But, you know, from the other end of that, those who know me know that I can be a little strange and encourage a fun atmosphere. And I think that's important in an environment as well.
Yeah, and I want to put my 2 cents in regarding the idea of fun and enjoying a job. I always took the approach that it was really about professional satisfaction in the job, not necessarily, you know, the Friday water pistol day, not necessarily about having games. I mean, that's interesting too. But what I found for myself personally and for the people who work for me, if you were able to leave the job at the end of the day feeling good about yourself and really feeling you've achieved something, you know what, you look back and you do say, that is fun. Not necessarily in, you know, the way people would define fun, but it's all about really achievement and recognition, and, you know, it doesn't have to be stressful. So I think people do these fun activities because they're looking for what I would say almost, you know, diversions. I don't think it's necessary. I've been fortunate in my career in finding that just, you know, I'm looking forward to going to work. So I'm a bit more traditional. Mike, you're strange. I'm traditional, so we make it work.
Well, you know, and I'll point out too, I think that as managers, you have to take a constant temperature on your project. And there are times that they get very stressful. And the managers that I had most respect for growing up were those who understood that and could take that temperature and could do something to relieve that stress. We had one project where it was a killer. And when it got so bad and you're there 6 days, 7 days in a row, 16, 18 hours every day, all of a sudden he could sense it. And he'd get on his bicycle, and we all had little pellet guns and Nerf bows and arrows, and he'd drive around with a big target on his back. And it broke up the monotony. It relieved the stress. And I look back saying, man, he was awesome to be able to recognize that and to give us that break to help us continue going forward.
All right. You guys want to take one more question before I take control and go ahead and plug Tenrocks? Would that be okay?
That sounds like a plan.
All right. So let me read it out to you guys. What's the difference between a leader, a champion, and a hero? Because our organization has all three.
Mike, why don't I take a shot at that?
That's yours.
So, you know, so a leader is what we'll be trying to talk about today. In my mind, what was a champion and a hero, right? In my mind, I think it's very subjective, but a champion is a person that I might not parachuting, but I might wheel into a meeting who is the domain expert, knows all about the product. Everybody looks up to that individual. The hero is a similar sort of person who I may parachute into a situation where it's, you know, it's a 7-alarm fire, and that person's putting out a fire. Every company's got a champion and a hero or various combinations. But again, this is very subjective in my mind. Those individuals are usually lone wolves. They have these great characteristics that you can depend on. They're not what I would call, those characteristics are not what I would call leadership characteristics. So I see those as three different things. A leader, on the other hand, we didn't talk about it today. We do a lot of things in an egoless way, not draw attention to him or herself, and would utilize champions and heroes. That's how I put it. Just off top. Mike, anything you can add to that?
That's pretty good.
So if it, again, if it's okay with you guys, maybe what I can do is just steal control. I do need to plug Teracore. But if you can hang out with us for another 15 minutes, there would be potentially some additional questions that come in through the questions dialog box. So maybe we can reserve another couple of minutes for some end questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, and Marlon, I should add before you get started too that we talked a lot about best practices today with respect to leadership and project management, but this is all just part of it. There are three legs to the stool, right? There are people, there are processes and practices, then there's technology. And in the world we live in, you need to tie this all together with technology, and a solution like the PSA solution we're about to see could, believe it or not, actually has direct bearing on some of these leadership capabilities, especially when you're talking about providing people with extra responsibilities, giving them extra privileges, having them own tasks. These are things that you can automate. And by the way, it becomes very visible when you use a tool like a PSA tool or Teracore tool to do that. So hopefully, Marlon, you can talk a little bit about that as well and make it tie it back into our discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just a little bit about Teracore, in case the folks that have joined us today aren't really familiar with who we are. Well, Teracore provides, whoops, so let me just go back to that previous slide. So Teracore provides the leading cloud-based project or professional services automation solution. If you kind of take a look at this slide, it's divided into three areas. First, we talk about our expertise and certification. So in regards to the expertise component of that, we've authored numerous books on the subject of project management and professional services automation. So these were books that were authored by Teracore Resources, and you can actually pick the latest one up on Amazon.com. It's called Rise of the Project Workforce, Managing People and Projects in a Flat World. The solution and the organization is also certified. We have two different certifications. The first one is ISO 27001, and the next one was what was formerly referred to as SAS 70. They call it SSAE 16 SOC 1. So, these are basically certifications that we undergo annually. We go through an annual audit to safeguard it, to prove that that essentially the data that we're housing for our customers is safe and secure. Our partners include a number of different household names, including Microsoft, including Salesforce.com through their App Exchange, as well as being a registered education provider with PMI. A lot of you probably know that because I'm sure you're looking to pick up a PDU from today's session, which I'll go ahead and display a little bit later. As well as our mobile partners. So, products these days or solutions these days need to be mobile enabled, and our product has a greater mobile strategy with apps that are available for BlackBerry, the Android platform, as well as iPhone. And of course, our customers include some of the customers that you're seeing over on the right, and these are some of the more recognizable names that make up more than 500 customers that have successfully deployed the solution in 50 different countries. But truly, any project-oriented organization would benefit from leveraging the Teracore solution. So the Teracore solution is made up, or is modular. That's one of the key points of the product. You can pick and choose which of the 5 modules that you see within the Teracore box would best suit your needs. So there's a project planning component, and when we think of project planning, think of being able to manage your project using a Gantt chart, being able to link your tasks together, and so on. We also have a resource management and scheduling capability where you can look for the best possible resources within the organization to work on your projects based on things like skill set, availability, geographic location, proficiency, and so on. Time and expense probably needs no introduction. It basically allows you to track your time and expenses against those projects. Cost and billing is a bolt-on to that allows you to find the financial element of delivering projects, such as cost, revenue, profitability, and so on. And there's also a work process management module that's available for managing issues, risks, and scope changes. The foundation of the product is a graphical workflow engine that essentially manages all of the different processes. And there are built-in integrations to leading, accounting, content management, HR, and CRM tools. So without further ado, what I wanted to just quickly show were some of the inherent capabilities of the Teracore solution. So, today we were talking about empowerment. So the Teracore solution empowers your project workforce by essentially providing them with the tools that they need to become more independent and to make better and faster and more informed decisions. So, essentially what we want to provide your resources with is access to real-time data. Our tool comes with a wide variety of different dashboards to essentially allow your resources to make better and more informed decisions. So this is a dashboard that has kind of your traditional pie chart and bar charts down here at the bottom to represent information like project profitability, status, and so on. But what's key is the real-time capabilities to know how your project is doing right here, right now. So this project view allows me to kind of scan for projects, be able to see any issues that have just been logged, see the percentage of completion of these projects, look at the cost, look at the budget, see how well the project is doing from a general status perspective. If I need a little bit more detail, I'm welcome to just kind of drill in. I can click on the name of the project, look into the project financials, see resource utilization measures, and so on. If I need a little bit more detail, I can. I'll show you this a little bit later, but I can drill into the project's Gantt. And let me just show you real quick what that looks like. So here's the Gantt chart of that very same project. So essentially, what we want to do is provide you with real-time access to make better and more informed decisions and really empower your project workforce to kind of take the bull by the horns from a project delivery and management standpoint. Now, another key topic in terms of a professional services automation solution is essentially the ability to get the right resources on your projects and make sure that your resources aren't over or under allocated. So views such as the one that you're seeing up on your screen right now from a resource management perspective will allow you to take a look at the resource utilization levels. Okay, so these are resource utilization levels for different departments. If I just kind of look at the legend over here, we have a color-coded legend that will show me how busy my resources are. So again, we want to provide you with access to real-time data to make better and more informed decisions from a variety of different fronts. So project delivery goes essentially hand in hand with resource management, making sure that resources aren't over-allocated, overbooked, and kind of going crazy working on numerous projects at the same time. We also want to provide your end users with, sort of the ability to provide input in terms of how well a specific project is progressing. So, we've beefed up a number of different mechanisms, traditional mechanisms within our tool. Something as simple as a timesheet has been kind of beefed up to allow the end user to kind of provide feedback in terms of not only how much time they've spent on a given project, but if they have feedback in terms of whether the project is going to require additional time or what there are any issues that they might be experiencing and so on. So if you're, for example, if one of your users is saying, hey, supposedly I have 45% completion on this specific project, but actually that's kind of wrong, I'm going to need a little bit more time. Well, what they can do is they can request a change to essentially provide input to the project manager to say, hey, look, this project isn't going according to plan. I'm going to need a little bit more time on this task. So really getting everybody involved in the process to provide feedback and empowerment from a general project execution perspective. So that was my very, very quick 5 minutes on the overall Teracore solution. Certainly I'd be able to stretch what I wanted to talk about into an hour and a half or 2 hours, but I really didn't want to steal too much of the limelight from today's topic. Maybe what we can do with our final remaining few minutes is just address some of the additional questions that might have come in from some of the folks. And while that happens, what I'll do is I'll just kind of quickly paint up some of the PDU claim information. So if you guys are still there, are we okay to potentially maybe take another question or two?
Yeah, sure, Marlon. Actually, there are 2 questions for you on there. If you look at the bottom of the list, how does Teracore compare to things like Oracle?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sure, absolutely, absolutely. So there's a great question that's come in here. So essentially, how does Teracore compare with a variety of additional professional services automation solutions and larger ERP systems such as Oracle and so on? So that's a really good question. It might take more than a minute to answer, but I'll certainly do my best. Teracore is, first of all, it's a best-of-breed solution, so we're not necessarily tied to an ERP system. There's no sort of ulterior motive, if you will, to sell you any other additional solution except for a professional services automation tool. So our development knowledge and our industry knowledge really goes into the development of one specific tool. So that's more from a corporate perspective, but from a solution perspective, one main difference that we have vis-a-vis any other tool on the market is the graphical workflow engine that I only had a chance to very quickly describe. It really is the cornerstone of our product. So any process that essentially you would manage within Teracore is governed by a graphical workflow. So for example, simple processes like a time or expense report go through workflow for review and approval. And even more complex processes like requesting a resource on your project, issuing an invoice, or managing the entire project lifecycle are all governed by a workflow. So you can see where your process is at any given point in time. And you know, if maybe what we can do is specifically reach out to you if you need a little bit more detail in terms of that. It'd be our pleasure to go ahead and do that. So hopefully that that answers that one. There is another question that has come in here, and it's in regards to specific dashboard use. So let me just quickly read it out. What if we have a specific dashboard format that we want to use that's for our industry? Well, just unfortunately due to time constraints, it's hard to show everything that I'd like to show the audience, but our dashboards are fully configurable. And notice I didn't use the word customizable. You don't need to program anything from a dashboarding perspective to change it. So if there are industry-specific dashboards that you want to create, again, that's something that we allow our end users to do, is create their own dashboards using a click and drag type of interface. So apologies, you know, today's session was a little bit condensed from my perspective, so that's not something I was able to show you. But maybe what we can do is reach out, and if you need a more personalized session, it would be my pleasure to show that to you. And with about 1 minute to spare, gentlemen, I'm not sure if we caught probably the last but the best question in the questions panel, and I'm not sure really who to direct this to. And I promise I didn't write this one. This is an actual question that came in, and I'm not sure if it's a question or more of a knock-knock joke, but how many liters? The question reads, how many liters does it take to screw in a light bulb?
Oh, okay.
Joel, let me take that one.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You know, I'm going to tell you, a good leader will find this as a great opportunity to empower somebody else to take care of the light bulb. So I'm going to say it's an empowered leader.
Just one. My question, being a consultant, would be, what sort of light bulb? Is it fluorescent, or is it one of the modern ones?
Funny.
Good question. Thanks.
All right. So it looks like we're done just on time. I'll leave the PDU claim information up on the screen for the next for the next few moments. But before I kind of leave that up, I just wanted to pull up a contact page where you would be able to contact Teracore if you do have any additional questions. And if we haven't had a chance to review any your questions, we're going to go ahead and scan the questions that came in. And again, if we didn't get a chance to answer you, don't worry about it. Typically, what we do is we have a debrief session, and we'll go ahead and distribute whichever questions are most appropriate for Joe, Mike, or Ryan. We'll certainly get back to you. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. You see a contact page up there. And again, I'll flip to the PDU a little bit later so that you can kind of take that down. Also, today's session has been recorded, so you should be getting an email blast within the next few days with a link to that recording. On that note, I would like to sincerely thank Joe and Mike. Every time I speak to you guys, I certainly learn a thing or two, and I hope the audience felt the same way. I think today's session was great. So once again, I'd like to thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you, Marlon. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Marlon.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.